Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. How you doing
Thank you,
today?
Henry.
It's good to see
I'm
you.
doing great.
So, one of my long-term friends from Dallas, I met not too long after I moved here when we were both single before you had a son in college, and I was at your wedding before you had a son at all or a wife. I met you, um, and we met through Sino. He was also
Right.
single. And then there were some happy hours we went to, and then we played some tennis. And at some point, I realized that you were a real smart real estate investor and going on to become a builder as well. And in addition to becoming friends, you actually organized one of, I guess, the first larger investment partnerships where you put together loans, you and some friends with some equity and some guarantees. And we built a model home that was featured nationally in a magazine. And we built about 17, 18 million dollar plus homes. And that was a while ago. So they'd be $2 million houses now, or even three.
That
Uh,
like
your investors made a good return,
yeah.
and you've kind of been a backer of me in many ways ever since. So I wanted to have you on the show because in addition to just being a great guy, you're a real smart business person. And I know that you went to college, and when you graduated, you went straight into real estate. Would you like to talk a little bit about how you got started?
I
Uh,
actually I didn't. So
oh, okay.
you know, no, that evolved. I was in the medical sales business, selling pharmaceuticals and medical equipment right out of college because that's what I went to school for. And I got a job down here in 1980, a long time ago. And so I was given a car and a list of customers and started driving around to sell what I had to sell. Big, Fortune 500 company. Worked for actually several of them over the next 4 or 5 years. And it was okay, but didn't, I wasn't that enthusiastic about working for a big company because you're only as good as they want you, as long as they want you. You just have to keep producing and keep doing it, and you're at the subject to be let go on a recession or any time like that. It's you don't really build anything. You're just in sales and you're out selling. So along the way, I met other guys in Dallas, young guys that were doing real estate and everything from investment properties to land sales. And they were brokers in the commercial business. And they were telling me how much money they were making, even back then, back in the mid 80s. And I thought, wow, I was not even making that much in a year, and they were doing that on one sale. And so I decided to jump over there to the real estate business. I saved up enough money because you have to when you go into a straight commission business for a year to live for a year, and I got on with Henry S. Miller Company, which was a company that doesn't exist anymore, but they were a commercial brokerage company back in the 80s and 90s and earlier than that. And they merged eventually with Grubb and Ellis, which is another commercial working, selling commercial real estate uh, all through for years. Went through several recessions. The big recession back when RTC was selling property, I brokered a lot of properties from the government. Was the RTC Resolution Trust, and that was when they foreclosed. That was the first big recession back in the late 80s, and it lasted for a few years into the early 90s and worked right through that. And then so I picked up some uptime and some downtime on both, and everything's different. But I was selling everything from apartment complexes, shopping centers, did some land, mostly that type of property all around Dallas at the time. And it was good. It was good. But, all along the way, while I was doing that, I was seeing a lot of investors because that's who I dealt with. Everything from small, medium-sized investors that would buy an apartment complex to big pension fund type investors that were, had investors, hundreds of investors, and they would buy a very large apartment, multi-million-dollar apartment complex. Insurance companies, people like that would invest in those. So I saw the other side of the transaction with the principals involved, and then I started working with builders who would build property and would sell the property as soon as they finished it and got it leased. And so I kind of went over plans with builders and saw what they were doing and how they built the properties. And I started to think, this might be where I wanted to go, would be to get into the principal side. And so this really started kind of early, almost halfway of the time that I worked there, 6, 7 years into it. I thought, instead of me having to just keep working on finding new listings and selling, you're only as good as your next deal in commercial real estate. I thought maybe I could get into the principal side of it, whether it was building or just owning property. And so I started doing that. And then I got into buying small properties. Like, you can do it a lot of different ways, but when I would close a sale in commercial real estate, back then you didn't make a huge amount of money. You might make, 50,000, 100,000. Nowadays, these guys make, 3, 4, 500,000 because the deals are so much more expensive. They're so high priced that getting the 2% on those size deals gets you a lot more money than it did back then. The percentages were very similar. So I would take my 75,000 or 100,000, whatever I cleared, and I decided to just invest myself. And so I went over, and it was a pretty good strategy. I went over to Lower Greenville and saw these little rental properties over there, duplexes mostly.
And you're in Dallas, Texas, for those people who aren't here. So this Lower Greenville is an area where it had a lot of younger people and restaurants, and it's close to downtown, pretty close, but it's not as high priced as some other areas, especially when you started there. Yeah.
Right, and it wasn't that high price back then. It was Greenville Avenue had a good retail, night restaurant, clubs and stuff like that. And so this was on either side of Greenville Avenue. But mostly a lot of the properties that I looked at were duplexes, 2-family, they call them. And there's a limited number of those. They're just in like 4 or 5 blocks over there that ran right, in that North Greenville Avenue area. So I would buy these properties. Many of them needed renovation. And I started working on doing renovations, and this was all sort of just like a sideline while I was commercial brokering. But I just kept buying them down there and kept adding to my portfolio. And I would have to do some creative financing because sometimes I would come across a deal and I didn't have any money. I didn't have a deal closing, a commercial deal closing, and I had an opportunity to buy another property. So I'd have to come up with a lot of creative ways to buy the property with, going to banks. I remember I had some stock at the time. I took my stock out of the brokerage company and I would put that up as collateral at the bank and was able to borrow the money. I remember a couple of the first deals I bought in the very early time, you actually put down payment on my credit card and was able to buy them. But so over time, I accumulated, 30, 40 of these duplexes down there. And it became almost like a full-time job, just messing with them, just taking care of them. Even though I hired outside management, there's a lot of oversight. But it was a good portfolio because it was a desirable district area to own rental property. There was demand for rent, and rents were slowly going up. But believe it or not, they were only, I was buying those properties down there for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, and they've appreciated tremendously over the last couple of years. They've gone up quite a bit. But over time, diversified out and started buying, properties in other areas. And then I started to develop some properties. So I decided to build townhomes, and I would buy tear down properties, like really ones that were in very poor condition, further down, Greenville, more closer to downtown Dallas, and bought some properties down there on multifamily zone land, duplex zone land or single family zone land. So you couldn't build multiple multifamily units. But down off of Ross Avenue, which runs into downtown, it's multifamily zone land. And I bought some tear down type properties down there and just started building small townhomes, and you and I worked on one down there off Ross Avenue. It only had
Yeah,
8 units,
we sure did.
and it was very successful. And that was the first one that I did down there, and all those units sold pretty quickly, but all in the area down there around Ross and going on both sides of the streets probably have built now. I easily probably 9 or 10 complexes, probably 70, 80 units. The biggest one was 18 units. Sold all those for almost $500,000 each. And then I started renting a lot of them out. So many, I'd say more than half of the townhomes I built decided to rent them out, especially if they were less than 15 or 16 units, because the homeowners association is not as functional. You need a large, number of units. Like up over in Oak Lawn, I built over there 60 units, and in 2 phases, 30 units in each. And those had a much more functional homeowners association, because in economies of scale, the homeowners association fees are less, the management fees are less, and you also have people that want to participate, like a president, vice president, be on the board of directors. When you get down and you build 6 or 8 units, it's hard to find, tenants that will want, not tenants, but their owners that want to participate in the management. Some do, some don't. But over time, I found that many of them drop out. They don't want to do it. And then you've got a problem, because who's running the complex? And then the management fees from the management company are much higher. Everything is you don't get economies of scale. So on all those smaller complexes that were infill properties, where I'd tear them down and build 12 units or 16 units, I rented them out, and still have many of those today. And they've been good. They've done quite well. So that's how the evolution of all that came about.
Well, one of the things that's I think is interesting and impressive, it's not that easy to just start building. And like you said, you helped us with loans to build those custom homes. And I think you started on the smaller and the simpler ones, because actually we helped you build you have a very beautiful home modeled after a Louisiana plantation that your wife loved, called Devereaux. And at that point, we actually kind of half built your house. But now you build the big fancy ones. I mean, you're not doing custom homes, but you're doing very expensive, fancy, I guess they are custom homes, custom townhomes, that are pretty luxurious inside. And that's a little bit of a learning curve. I worked for a big builder. They trained me. I didn't just start on my own like you did. So talk about how you just got into that and trial by error, I guess, to some extent.
Well, the evolution going up to currently what working on right now, and have a variety of things. I'm still building townhomes, and I have a complex that's getting started right now down off another area down off Ross Avenue. And I've been over the years, buying and selling property. And so some you keep, some you don't, some are going to be good development sites in the future. But over the years, all those duplexes that I bought over off of Greenville Avenue on a lot of those, they call them the M streets, and in that area, they eventually, over time, they start to get a little worn out. They've been, the interiors need renovation, the properties need fix up, and all of that. But the lot values in those areas have gone up so much. And that's the same all around Dallas. Every lot values have exploded. It's just the demand is so high that the lot values have outstripped the values of the properties as they sit. And you have to go in and do extensive renovations and upgrading in order to really make them work, because your taxes are so high. The property taxes, when the city says you've got a lot that's worth $500,000 and you're making $1,200 a side, the numbers don't work very well to pay those taxes, and the insurance has doubled, and many of the expenses. So, because many of these properties have gotten almost paid off, started tearing them down along Greenville and building 2-family duplexes or duplex properties, which can be sold off half to one person and half to another. And the evolution of those in that area has been, they started out selling for 6 to 7. The first one that I built over there sold it for less than $600,000 a side. I think it was $575 a side, and it was not that big. It was 2 stories. I think they were like 2,500 square feet per side, and people bought, each side as homeowners. But now where they are is I'm in the same area, but I'm building 3-story units, and they are 3,400 a side with big rooftop terraces, and they're $1.2 million. So they've more than doubled in price, and the square footage is, with that size square footage, you can get there because you're allowed to build 3 stories, and so it makes it very profitable to do that in those areas. Now the question is, will they continue to sell? They have been selling real well, but interest rates are up a lot. I think I sense a little slowing down in buyers, so that remains to get those prices. None of the material costs have really dropped. They're still, as high as they've been over the last year with the inflation that took place. So it's really, with land as high as it is and with the material costs as high as it is, you have to get these high numbers to make it make sense, or it just doesn't work. So far it is, and we'll see if it continues, but the interest rates are not helping. They're hurting a little bit. So that's what I'm doing now. We've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these duplex properties on the market. Some are going to be sold, put on the market soon. I say on the market, being under construction. Some are almost done. Got 3 more in the planning stage. So the plan is to build out of all of these properties I bought a long time ago. But I'm also building in the $2 to $2.5 million price range, and I've got 2 of those starting here in another month, and those are on just recent lot purchases. So just bought the lots and decided they were single family zone lots. Same Lakewood, more Lakewood area, if you know where that is in Dallas. It's a good residential.
You are doing large custom homes now. I didn't even know that. You're doing so many things. It's hard to keep up with you, Tom.
Yeah, these are 5,000 plus square foot homes, and they're in a good neighborhood, hoping that the economy stays good. Interest rates kind of take, I'm looking at interest rates coming down, which will help, slowly coming down. So these things take a year to a year and a half to build, and we're just starting them now. So hopefully timing is right when they'll be available for sale. So yeah, that's what's been going on. But those partnerships you mentioned, I did put together several different partnerships over the years. One of those was Lake Forest with a number of investors, and we just got all these 4, 5, 6 investors to put up equity in order to get the partnership going, and we arranged the financing on the loans. And I mean, remember you and Jerry built these homes up at Lake Forest. We bought, I can't remember, maybe 10 or so lots, and then did a couple of
15.
custom for people as part of the partnership.
Right. 15 lots.
Yeah, so, right, and that all worked out pretty well. It was profitable, and built those houses and sold the houses, and it worked well. And then did the same thing on some townhouse partnerships with investors. Had a few projects we built and had some partners in a partnership, and we were able to sell the townhomes. It's a real, I'm not going to say it's all, perfect and wonderful, because timing is very critical in a lot of these, as you know. And the economy, we've been fortunate that it's been very good for the last 10 years. We haven't had any bad recessions, but I've been through like probably 4 recessions, and 2 of them really bad. And in the 2008, 2009 recession, I had multiple properties under construction. And luckily, I was able to do some workouts. But when you can't get loans and the banks call your loans, I had to do some fast talking and come up with some equity in order to pay them down a little bit in order to keep them going. We had to rent the properties out. Didn't want to rent them. They were on the market to be sold. I remember one property sold half of the townhomes, the other half couldn't. They were just, it was dead in the water. Nobody was buying anything. And we had to rent them out really inexpensively. They didn't really cash flow at all, but it was just a way to carry them into the future. And the lender just stuck with us because we paid some of it down, but everybody had to put money up. It's a difficult call when you have to do capital calls with your partners and say, hey, we've all got to chip in, and we got to, pay this loan down in order to keep it. Otherwise they're going to foreclose. So That's what you have to do. But this is the way the business is, because the cycle for real estate, if you're building, is quite long. And depending on the size of the project you're building, I mean, a house these days with construction delays and just the details involved can be 9 to 12 months just to build a house. But the planning goes on 6 months prior to that. So from start to finish, you're talking about 18 months to 2 years really to build a house, with all the arrangements of the loans and getting all the plans done and everything set up. And so you everything can change. A lot of things can change. And if you're doing a bigger project, you're looking at 2 years or more, and or three if it's a large project. By that time you can start off in a wonderful environment, and 3 years later you can be in a recession, and then you're going to have some problems. And a lot of builders, they know this. They've prepared, or they roll the dice and they just hope that they can work it out when that time comes. And most of the time, unless it gets really, really bad, lenders do work with you. If you're been a good customer, they don't want your property back, but they do need concessions, and you have to be prepared for that. So yeah, it's just I've been into a lot of different things, from these partnerships to rental properties to management of properties, but it's worked out. I mean, I've not regretted it at all, because it's a great way to build wealth over time. And you can hold on to some properties, sell some properties, but it
That's one of
takes,
the
what's that?
that's one of the lessons that I think we talked about before we actually got on the podcast, was that it's not a quick rich, get rich quick business. It's hard work and plan for the long term, and the longer you can hold. It's more a Warren Buffett strategy, buy and hold and always be managing, always be looking, always be building when you can. Um, and the same opportunities aren't there, obviously, in that area, but there's other areas for people that are trying to get going.
Well, that's what you have to do. You have to look around. There's an ebb and flow in any city, in any community. Certain areas become hot and they get very expensive. They go up in price to where they're not as much of an opportunity there anymore. Not that they're not good properties at own, but they just cost too much. You have to look at other areas. You have to look for the next area that's going to turn on, but it takes time. Just like what you said, it might take 15, 20 years, but you start, you get in there, you hang on, and it comes around. So yeah, that's what you have to do. And even like when I first got started in that area off of Greenville Avenue, and properties were 60, 70, 80, $90,000, and now they're $500,000. And people think, they say in that area, well, how can I do this now? These properties are so expensive. How can I buy something that's $400,000 or $500,000 and do what you did? And I say, well, you're right. It's harder to do it today, but if you can do it, if you can find a way through partners, through equity borrowing of money, some way to buy. Look around for good deals. There are, not everything is that price. This is where you have to do the legwork. You have to cold call directly. You got to get things set up in advance with a lender. You got to be ready to pull the trigger. Many sellers, when you say you want to buy, they don't want to wait for you to go get a loan. You have to have everything lined up, and then you make a good, strong offer that if you've done your research, that it's a good deal, and maybe it's a little below market. And like what I tell people, you're paying, the price you're paying today, if you're young enough and have the time to wait on it, in 20 years, it is going to be 2 or 3 times what I think, due to inflation, what it is now. So things are going to continue to go up in value. Inflation is going to stay around. It's going to be maybe, lower, 2, 3, 4%, but that just means that all properties are going to go up over time. And so and rents, and it means the same thing for rents. If it's a rental property, they're going to go up over time. So it's always going to go up in value. And that's why it's, I think, a good investment, a good hedge against inflation.
I think, maybe to wrap up, did you also, unless there's something you want to add, did you also get involved with some multifamily, some apartments, maybe some smaller apartments with some other partners?
Well, I did. I was in, yes, I bought a couple of apartment complexes. Some of these things go, but this was more when I was working for Grubb and Ellis, because we would get exposed to a lot of apartment deals. And when you see dozens and dozens of apartment deals, and that's why I say it's a good way to learn, is be a broker in whatever area, retail or office or industrial or apartments, is you get exposure to many, many deals and you recognize reasonable deals. And so we bought as a group of investors. We would make, like, we'd say, hey, this is just a really good deal right here, and this is what the seller wants. He wants this, and I think we can add value add. We can do some renovation. We can fix it up. And I mean, I bought a 127 unit. We bought another one that was like 184 units. Another one that was like around 100 units. And they were in just different parts of town, more just value add opportunities. And we're able to buy them and keep them for a few years, 4 or 5 years, and then sell them and make some good money doing that. So that was just more opportunistic because I was in the business and exposed to them, and just was able to put together a group, and we were able to buy them back then. But and you know, I was going to say one more thing about owning property and owning real estate over the years, whether it's rental properties as simple as a single family home, or duplexes, or townhome, or apartments. I've sold many properties. I've bought many properties. So I've bought and sold many more than I have today. And I look back on all of those sales, and at the time I thought, okay, for whatever reason, I thought it was a good time to sell. I thought I was getting a good price, and I can make a good profit, and so I did it. But now I look back today, in every one of those cases, I have regret that I did, because they've gone up so much more in value. And in some cases, many times the value, they keep going up. So what I'm saying is, if I would have kept everything that I ever had, I'd have a lot more as far as net worth goes, because they do go up and they just continue to go up. But there's only, everybody's different as far as what you tolerance for what you can take care of. And, you still have to sleep at night. You still have to have some kind of life, and you can get a lot of property that you're involved in. And even if you have management, there's a lot of work to oversee it and take care of it, or it can get out of hand. But I'm saying, for anybody out there that wants to buy properties, they're going to go up. It's just, you buy the best deal you can and you manage it well, it will be worth more in the future. And try to just leverage. You can do a lot of the things that you've heard about. I mean, there's been a lot of training about how to leverage yourself and how to borrow against your equity to buy more property. They say you can sell a property, fix it up and sell it, and take that profit and buy 2 more, do that again and buy 2 more, and leverage yourself up. Yes, you can do all that too, and I have done all that. There's many ways to do it, I guess, is the point. Many ways. So yeah, it's been good.
Well, you certainly offered a lot of insight, and it's an interesting story, for sure. So, hey, thanks for getting on, and I look forward to seeing you on the tennis court sometime soon, and for lunch.
I do too. I'm going to try to find time to do that.
Yeah, you've always been a hard worker. That's one thing I'll say. Ever since I've known you, up early, and working hard, a lot of energy. It's a great attribute. Makes the world go round.
Well, thank you. And I enjoyed talking to you, Henry.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Bye.
Okay. Bye.